Scene 1. River Hunt beyond Row. A gold-enameled shield is moving through the afternoon beside a quiet river, its rim catching little pieces of sun beneath the trees. The man who carries it is Macsen Wledig, emperor in Rome, though for these green hours beyond the city he is simply a rider among riders. Hounds nose through fern and grass. Hooves press dark crescents into the damp ground. Somewhere farther along the valley, a horn gives one mellow call and then leaves the warm air undisturbed. Welcome to the drowsy Storyteller. Tonight an emperor will follow a road that first appears only in sleep. It will lead him over a mountain onto a silvered ship, through the mist of Britain, and at last to a golden hall beside tidal water. There, among a board of carved pieces and chairs bright with red gold, a woman named Hélène will be waiting. The way is long, but nothing upon it needs to hurry. Rome lies behind the hunting company, softened by distance and summer haze. Its roofs no longer crowd the horizon. The straight roads and measured walls have yielded to a valley where alders lean over slow water and pale seed heads tremble whenever the breeze passes. Macsen rides under layered branches with the easy assurance of someone accustomed to being followed. Purple does not need to be visible upon him for the others to know where the center of their company lies. A turn of his horse is enough to redirect a cluster of attendants. A lifted hand stills the nearest horn. The old Welsh name Wledig carries the sense of a ruler, a lord whose power reaches over land. Yet power feels light in this hour. It rests in the enamel along the shield, in the small badges worn by certain companions, and in the respectful space that opens wherever Macsen pauses. He has left petitions, ledgers, guards at doorways, and the dry murmur of counsel inside the city. The hunt gives him water, sound, leaf, shade, and a track that wanders according to the animal rather than the surveyor. Macsen notices the river bending toward a wider meadow. The current there holds reflected clouds so steadily that the surface seems to contain another sky. Beyond it, low hills gather blue at their farther edges. He may have hunted here before, but the valley has the unfamiliar gentleness of a place encountered between duties. Every familiar object has loosened from its ordinary use. A spear is only a narrow glint among leaves. A cloak folded behind a saddle is a patch of faded red. The emperor's shield, designed to turn a blow, makes a pool of shade. By late afternoon, the company has traveled farther than intended. Nobody is concerned. They have food in their bags, water beside them, and enough daylight to find the outward road again. The senior riders exchange quiet estimates of distance while younger attendants listen for the pack. Macsen does not join their calculation. His gaze has settled on a solitary tree near the river, broad enough to shelter both a man and the shield-bearer who serves him. The hounds are now distant flecks of sound. Water folds around a half-submerged stone with the same soft syllable over and over, never quite repeating itself. Macsen drinks, rinses his fingertips, and watches droplets gather along the edge of a bronze cup. For a ruler whose waking life is filled with answers, the valley asks nothing more difficult than whether to rest. He sits first, one knee raised, listening while the company settles into its own loose circle. Some men remain mounted. Others share bread and dried fruit. A groom checks a strap under the shade of an ash. Nobody knows that the ordinary riverbank has become the threshold of a road more enduring than any mile marker set by imperial hands. The sun lowers until it meets the shield's curved face. Gold enamel turns amber, then deep honey, while small red details glow around the boss. Macsen leans back upon the mantle. Above him, leaves overlap like dark green scales, and between them the sky is pale and immense. The valley, the riders, and distant Rome remain exactly where they are. Only his eyes grow heavy. Soon the shield will be lifted over him, and the first country of his dream will begin beyond its circular shade. Scene 2. Shield shade and the first sleep. The shield-bearer plants the lower rim carefully in the turf and angles the golden face against the westering sun. A round shadow settles over Macsen's brow and chest. Light passes through the leaves beyond it, but here the day becomes cool, enamel-scented, and dim. He closes his eyes while the river continues its quiet work below. Sleep does not take him by surprise. It gathers gradually from the weight of his limbs, the murmur of men speaking far enough away that words lose their edges, and the soft friction of willow leaves. One horse stamps at a fly. A buckle touches another buckle. Then these things become so distant that they might belong to a different valley. The shield remains the last clear object. Its gold is no longer above him, yet an amber circle persists behind his eyelids. Within that warm darkness, a path forms. It is not one of the hard Roman roads that leave the capital in straight, deliberate lines. This route begins as a brightness on rising ground, a narrow invitation climbing out of the river country toward hills Macsen has never seen. In the dream he is walking and riding at once, carried without effort while every stone beneath him remains distinct. The valley lengthens. The familiar river turns through unknown meadows, receiving small streams that come down from wooded slopes. Neither attendants nor hounds appear, though he does not feel alone. The road itself has the companionship of something certain about its destination. He passes fields where the grain is silver on one side and green on the other, changing with each breath of wind. Smoke rises from low roofs, but no doors stand near the road. A heron lifts from the bank, wings opening slowly enough for him to see the dark tips of every feather. Its reflection leaves the water a moment later, and both bird and shadow travel west. Dream distance behaves with kindness. A ridge that should require an hour arrives between 2 footfalls. A river broad enough to delay an army allows him over by a shallow of clear stones. The sun never sets, although its color deepens. Gold from the shield seems to have entered the air, giving every reed and pebble a narrow border of light. Ahead, the land begins to rise more strongly. Pines appear among broad-leaved trees, their resin warming the path with a darker scent. Water runs faster over pale rock. The brightness that guides him climbs toward a remote shoulder of earth where cloud gathers, folds apart, and gathers again. He senses a mountain beyond those veils, higher than any summit he knows. Nothing in the dream explains why he must travel there. The certainty comes without words. Somewhere beyond the high ground is a coast, beyond the coast an island, within that island a hall. These knowledge fragments rest in him as naturally as memories, although none belong to his waking life. He receives them without question and moves onward. Near the mountain's foot, the way narrows between 2 mossy stones. Tiny white flowers grow in their seams. A stream crosses the path and leaves a fan of wet gravel shining below. Macsen pauses, not from weariness, but because the cold sound of the water seems important. He hears, beneath it, the faintest clatter of carved pieces touching a board. The sound disappears when a cloud shadow passes. In its place comes the low groan of timber under a great sail, though no sea is visible. The dream is giving him distant echoes of places not yet reached. Each one is quiet enough to be mistaken for wind, and each turns his attention farther west. Above the valley, a single summit breaks through cloud like an island rising from a white ocean. The path tilts toward it. Grass gives way to heather, then to grey rock striped with small threads of water. Macsen follows without haste, protected still by the cool circle of the shield that lies far away beside the Roman river. His sleeping body does not stir. The bearer shifts one hand upon the rim to keep the shade even. Under that faithful gold, the emperor crosses the first boundary of his dream and begins the ascent toward a mountain higher than the sky around it. Scene 3. The mountain higher than sky. The mountain occupies the dream before Macsen reaches it. Its lower woods are dark green, its middle slopes carry long, pale scars of stone, and its crown enters weather of its own making. Clouds flow against the upper ridges and divide like water around the prow of a ship. The road continues directly toward that hidden height. Each change in the land arrives through sound. River murmur fades into the thin trickle of hillside springs. Leaf movement becomes the dry whisper of heather. Farther up, even the heather falls behind, leaving wind to move along shelves of rock with a broad, low voice. The air cools against Macsen's face, though the light remains mellow. He looks down once and sees valleys layered to the east. The nearest holds individual trees and the silver twist of the river. Beyond it lie softer folds, each more blue than the last, until distance becomes a calm haze. No palace, road station, or column marks where imperial country ended. The world behind him has become color alone. The way underfoot is ancient without being worn. Flat stones fit together where the incline grows steep, as though hands unknown to Rome prepared them for one traveler. In hollows beside the path, rainwater reflects the moving cloud. A small brown bird drinks at one of these sky-colored pools, untroubled by the emperor passing close. From this place he hears the sea for the first time. It cannot be seen, and perhaps it is still many leagues away, but its slow breadth is unmistakable. The sound does not resemble the river. It arrives in spacious intervals, a distant inhalation followed by a long release. Somewhere below and west, a fleet waits at a river mouth to meet it. Then the air thins clear. Macsen stands above the cloud layer on a broad summit where the sun is low but unobstructed. White weather stretches beneath him in every direction except west. There the cloud has opened into a long corridor of view, revealing descending land, a river bright as a drawn thread, and a remote blue margin that can only be the sea. No triumph accompanies the height. The mountain's gift is orientation, not mastery. It shows him that the road will go down through unfamiliar country and keep its course when sight can no longer reach the destination. It also shows very faintly the shape of masts clustered where the river widens. They are slender marks in the evening brilliance, too distant for any waking eye, yet perfectly clear within sleep. The dream allows a moment of complete stillness. Cloud shadows travel under his feet, water shines in the west. The rowan berries far below are no longer visible, though their red color remains in memory. Macsen senses another red waiting at the journey's end, a narrow frontlet upon Ellen's brow, a chair holding the warm shades of metal and fire. He does not know her name yet. He knows only that the mountain is not the wonder he has come to find. Its summit is a turning place, a high hinge between the river valley of his beginning and the sea road opening beyond. Even an emperor can stand here as a guest of the weather, receiving direction from cloud and light. On the western side, steps descend beside a spring that wells directly from the stone. The water gathers into a channel no wider than his hand. It will become a stream, then join a river, and the river will carry the memory of this height down to the waiting ships. Macsen follows that young water as it slips from the summit. His route now lowers through a country washed clean by mist. Grasses bend all in one direction. Sheep appear like scattered pieces of wool on the farther slopes, each with a small shadow. At the base, the spring has already gained a voice among rounded stones. Behind him, the highest peak withdraws into cloud, keeping only its pale upper edge in sunlight. Ahead, masts rise more distinctly above the valley floor. The road and river are drawing near one another, and both are going toward the same open mouth. Scene 4, Fleet at the river mouths. By the time Macsen reaches low ground, the mountain water has broadened into a river deep enough to carry ships. Reeds line its quieter bends, salt mingles with the green smell of its banks, and gulls turn above the current on wings lit cream by the late sun. A fleet lies moored where fresh water meets the tide. The vessels are larger than those that first appeared from the summit. Some have dark hulls rubbed with oil, others bear strips of gilding along their rails, thin flames of metal reflected in each small wave. Ropes descend from masts and make patient tapping sounds against wood. Furled sails hang in heavy folds, waiting for a wind that has already begun to stir at the river's mouth. The emperor walks along the waterline first. Tide foam reaches his boots and falls away, leaving a lace of bubbles that vanishes almost at once. Small shells lie among ribbons of brown weed. Behind the fleet, the river valley points back toward the clouded mountain, now only a dark shape under the eastern sky. The largest vessel carries a sail the color of undyed wool and fittings bright with silver. Its mast has been polished until the grain seems to move beneath the surface. At the prow, no fierce creature bears carved teeth. Instead, a simple bird inclines its head toward the west, the wooden feathers worn smooth by spray. Macsen steps onto a landing stage. Timber gives softly beneath his weight. The river smells of wet rope, salt, tar, and the cool mineral scent brought down from high springs. Crew members untie lines in a sequence so practiced that their movements barely disturb the evening. A coil becomes loose. A loop lifts from a post, the current receives the hull. Other ships follow. Their oars remain shipped, for the tide carries them outward and the growing breeze opens the first sail. Canvas fills without a snap, it rounds slowly then holds. The fleet turns as one loose constellation, each vessel maintaining its own patch of water while sharing the same direction. From the deck, Macsen watches the riverbanks withdraw. Reeds become a green edge. Gulls settle briefly on sandbars that are already narrowing beneath the tide. The mountain river loses its brown-green color and takes on the darker blue of the sea. Every change is gradual enough that no single moment can be called a crossing. Farther out, the fleet spreads beneath a wide band of cloud. Sunlight comes through an opening near the horizon and turns every wake to bronze. One by one, the last land sounds disappear. The only rhythm is hull against wave, rope against mast, wind across the rounded sail. Macsen looks west and sees no island. Still, the road has not ended at the shore. It has changed substance. What was stone on the mountain and packed earth in the valley now lies invisible over water, held by masts, tide, and the quiet agreement of ships. Among the crew, a man carries a narrow length of pale material toward the side. At first, Macsen takes it for ivory. Then he sees the pores and layered grain of whale bone, shaped into a fitting unlike any used on the deck. The object seems to belong to another passage still ahead, a bridge between one silvered hull and an unseen land. Dusk gathers, but no lamps are lit. The gilded rails keep a soft radiance of their own. Behind the fleet, the river mouth closes into shadow. Before it, the sea opens with a deep, untroubled sound, and Macsen is carried toward the pale bridge that waits beyond the next fold of sleep. Scene 5, Whalebone Bridge and Silvered Ship. The fleet has thinned into mist. Nearby vessels appear at intervals, their sails ghostly and calm, then fade behind moving veils. Macsen's own ship remains sure beneath him. A sailor folds a wet line around a cleat. Another lays a hand upon the mast, feeling through the wood for the change in water that sight cannot show. Ahead, something pale extends over the sea. It is too narrow for land and too level for cloud. As the ship approaches, the shape resolves into a bridge made from long pieces of whale bone, creamy white above the dark water. The bones have been fitted side by side, their natural curves forming a gentle rise toward the middle. No explanation is offered for a bridge where ships might pass. Dreams preserve wonder by allowing it to remain useful. This bridge links the deck to another vessel brighter than the first, a great silvered ship resting beyond the mist. Its planks carry a muted sheen, not mirror-bright, but soft as moonlight on worn metal. The near end of the whalebone way settles against the rail. It makes no harsh contact. Leather wrappings cushion the joining, and two crew members hold braided ropes along either side. Macsen places one foot upon the pale surface. The bone is smooth from many crossings, with faint dark lines running through it like currents drawn on an old map. Beneath him, the sea moves visibly between the fitted lengths. Green water lifts, darkens, and slips away. There is no danger in the view. The bridge is broad enough for a steady pace, and the ropes are warm from the hands that have held them. Halfway over, Macsen pauses above the deepest blue. From this small height, he hears several worlds at once. The first ship murmurs behind him. The second gives a deep wooden note ahead. Under both lies the sea, continuous and patient. A white bird passes below the bridge, skimming so near the wave that one wingtip leaves a brief line on the surface. The silvered vessel receives him onto a deck inlaid with narrow strips of gold. Its sail is larger, and on the inside it holds the warm color of lamplight even under the grey sky. A bench beside the stern is covered in dark blue cloth. At its end lies a small carved piece shaped like a horse, perhaps escaped from a game board, perhaps waiting for the hall where its fellows are arranged. Macsen lifts the piece. It is ivory, cool at first, then gradually warm in his palm. Its legs are tucked beneath it, yet the tiny head leans forward as if listening for a command. The carving has not been finished. One side bears the clean marks of a narrow blade, shallow curls that catch against his thumb. He sets it back exactly where it rested. The object belongs to the western end of the journey more than to him. Soon he will see Idav shaping such pieces from ivory, surrounded by the quiet concentration of a golden hall. For now, this little horse travels near the stern while the great sail receives a wind scented faintly with rain and distant earth. The whalebone bridge is drawn away. Its pale arc folds into mist without seeming to shorten. Macsen's former ship becomes a dark outline, then a gilded spark, then nothing visible at all. The silvered hull turns northwest, following a current discernible only by the long lines of foam laid upon the sea. Late light moves along the rail until each fitting glows in sequence. The deck rises and settles. Somewhere beyond the mist, waves are touching rugged stone, and rain is passing over an island whose name the Emperor does not yet know. He feels its presence first as coolness upon the wind. A scent of wet fern joins the salt. The crew unfurls a smaller forward sail. In the silence after the rope is made fast, a shore bird calls once from invisible land. The silvered ship continues toward that call, carrying Macsen from the open sea into the green margin of Britain. Scene 6. The island of rugged coasts. Land emerges not as a single line, but as several dark layers inside the mist. The nearest is a shelf of rock where water opens into white lace. Behind it rises a slope covered with wet grass, and farther inland, a range of dim hills receives the rain. The island appears to have been resting under weather for a very long time. The silvered ship enters a narrow haven guarded by two headlands. Their stone faces are streaked with mineral colors, grey, rust, and a faint green where plants have found ledges. Seals lift round heads beyond the calmer water, watch the sail pass and sink without hurry. A cormorant dries its wings on a black rock close to shore. Macsen hears pebbles rolling in the wash before he sees the beach. Each receding wave draws them seaward with a low, rounded murmur. No harbour wall has been built here. A timber landing reaches only a short distance into the cove, silvered by rain and age. The ship comes beside it as gently as a leaf meeting the bank of a pool. When he steps ashore, the earth yields beneath his boot. Moss covers the path between stones. Water hangs from the tips of fern fronds and collects in the tiny cups of leaves. The air carries salt, peat, sheep wool, and wood smoke from somewhere beyond the first hill. This is Britain, although no voice announces it. The name rises within the dream with the same inward certainty that guided him over the mountain. It is an island of many distances, rugged at the edges and softly divided within by rivers, high ground, marsh, and woodland. The road he follows will cross only a slender part of it, yet that part will deepen into memory more strongly than the whole measured reach of empire. A small company waits near the landing. Their cloaks are fastened with bronze pins. Rain darkens the wool at their shoulders, and their horses stand with lowered heads, accustomed to weather. One rider leads forward a grey mount for Macsen. The saddle carries no ornament beyond a braided strap, but the leather is oiled and warm beneath his hand. They ride inland along a track bordered by gorse. Yellow flowers hold small drops of rain. The coast remains visible between hills for a while, a changing patch of pewter under the cloud, until the route enters woodland. Oak trunks rise from banks padded with moss. Hazel branches meet overhead and release occasional drops onto cloak and mane. The path does not have Roman straightness. It follows the easiest conversations between ground and water, bending around a wet hollow, climbing where roots make firm steps, descending toward a stream at the shallowest stones. Macsen recognizes another kind of intelligence in these curves. A road need not command the land to travel faithfully through it. Beyond the woods, the country widens into hills stitched with stone walls. Low cloud travels so close to the summits that the grey wool of sky and the grey backs of ridges seem woven together. Streams shine wherever the land folds. Macsen's guides point west, though no words reach him, and a darker mountain range becomes visible under the clearing weather. The tallest summit has a broad, austere presence. Snow does not cover it, but pale rock near the crown holds the color of old snow. This is the mountain later called Snowdon, rising above the road to Arvon. Its slopes are farther away than they first appear. The dream prepares Macsen for that distance by laying a warm valley between, rich with alder, pasture, and slow-running water. Evening gathers around a farmstead set behind a circle of trees. The riders do not enter. A lamp glows through a horn-covered window, and the smell of oat bread drifts briefly onto the road. That single domestic warmth tells Macsen more about the island than a fortress could. People have made shelter here between rain and mountain, and their small lights endure. The coast is gone now, concealed by fold after fold of ground. Ahead, Snowdun keeps the final brightness of the day along one ridge. Hoofbeats soften on the wet track. The company travels toward that pale height, while somewhere beyond it tidal water is moving around the stones of Aber Saint. Scene 7, Snowdun and the road to Arvon. Snowdun changes shape with every mile. From the open hills it was a single dark mass. Nearer now it divides into shoulders, hollows, broken ridges, and long slopes where cloud shadow drifts over grass. The road approaches without climbing to the summit, keeping to valleys where streams carry the mountain down in clear, cold ribbons. Macsen rides beneath a sky newly washed of rain. Sun reaches the upper rock while the lower land remains blue-grey. On a distant ledge, water descends in a white thread and disappears among boulders. Ravens turn near the height, their calls softened by space until they resemble wooden knocks from far away. The riders cross a stream over flat slabs set just beneath the surface. Water curls around each horse's hoof and settles again. Small silver fish hold themselves against the current in the shadows. One guide dismounts on the farther bank to tighten a girth, and the company pauses among the scent of crushed bog myrtle. Here the dream road feels less like a vision and more like a route remembered by the body. Macsen knows where it will bend before the bend appears. He expects a rowan at the next rise and finds one there, its branches leaning east. He anticipates a view of broad water, yet the hill first reveals only another green valley. The promised brightness remains one ridge farther on. Arvon lies beyond that ridge, the land facing the island of Anglesey across the Menai water. The name comes softly, joined to a sensation of shelter beneath mountains. Fields grow smaller as the ground folds. Houses keep close to slopes. Their walls are built from local stone, colors ranging from blue to brown according to rain and sun. Macsen takes bread from a saddlebag. It is dense, faintly sweet, and still carries warmth at its center. He eats while looking toward the mountain. An emperor's meal can arrive on silver beneath a painted ceiling, but hunger in the dream is satisfied by bread, spring water, and a quiet patch of ground where no one petitions him. Cloud closes over the summit. Light moves down into the valley instead, revealing the individual walls of fields and the pale trunks of birches beside the river. The road gleams where rain remains in shallow ruts. Far off, cattle bells create a slow, irregular pattern, one tone answering another without ever forming a command. After the rest, they reach the ridge. The land opens westward all at once. A wide arm of sea lies below, calm enough to hold the sky, and beyond it Anglesey rests low and green. Tidal channels curve through sand in silver branches. Nearer the foot of the mountain, roofs gather around the mouth of the Sayont, where fresh water enters the strait. That gathering is Kaya Saint, also remembered as Aber Saint, the place toward which every stage of Macsen's sleep has been tending. No vast city walls announce it. The settlement sits comfortably between river, tidal water, and rising land. Smoke leans from roofs under the sea breeze. A narrow track descends through fields toward an open gate. One roof catches the sun. Gold spreads across it in a warm sheet, too bright for thatch and too deep for ordinary metal. The hall beneath is still distant, partly hidden by trees, but Macsen feels the road drawing taut between his heart and its doorway. The little carved clatter heard near the first mountain stream returns, now unmistakably the sound of game pieces being set upon a board. The riders continue down. Air from the strait tastes of salt and cool stone. Anglesey shifts in and out of a band of mist, never entirely gone. To the south, Snowdun rises behind them with cloud folded around its crown. To the north, tidal light opens toward the sea. At the settlement's edge, a woman carries a basket of rushes past the road. A child follows with two smooth stones, clicking them together in a private game. Neither looks surprised by the company. Gates here are meant to admit travelers while the daylight remains. Macsen sees that the entrance ahead stands unbarred. Beyond it, a path of pale gravel crosses a courtyard and reaches the golden-roofed hall. The dream has taken him from imperial Rome to this western threshold without once losing its quiet thread. Now the gate is near enough for him to hear water dripping from its timber lintel. He rides forward, while the island of Anglesey floats behind the roofs, like a green memory laid upon silver water. Scene 8. The open gate at Aber Saint. The gate posts are oak, darkened by many winters and rounded where hands have touched them. Rainwater runs down one side into a groove worn by cart wheels. No guard lowers a spear, no herald calls from the wall. Macsen passes under the beam as easily as evening passes into a house whose lamp is already lit. Inside, the courtyard holds the ordinary signs of a prosperous household. Bundles of firewood stand under a lean-to. 2 ponies crop the shorter grass near a woven fence. A line of washed cloth stirs between posts, pale against the darker trees. The golden hall rises beyond these useful things without making them seem small. Its roof carries broad plates whose color changes under cloud. One moment they are yellow as late wheat, the next they deepen to bronze. The walls beneath are timber, joined and carved around door and eaves, but no carving declares a victory. Leaves, running water and long-necked birds follow the grain of the wood. A stream crosses the grounds in a stone-lined channel on its way to the Seance. Someone has placed a wooden dipper beside it. The bowl turns slightly whenever the water lifts its handle, producing a faint hollow tap. Macsen dismounts near this sound, and the grey horse lowers its muzzle to drink farther down. The guides who brought him from the coast no longer stand nearby. Their absence feels complete but not alarming. Perhaps they have gone to the stable. Perhaps the dream needed them only until the gate. Macsen walks alone across pale gravel scattered with small pieces of shell. Each step brings the game boards clicking more clearly through the open hall door. Macsen pauses under the roof edge. The air within carries beeswax, apple wood, smoke, wool, and something sweet simmered with spice. Light does not pour from the doorway so much as rest there, amber and steady. It lies over the threshold plank, revealing fine scratches made by countless crossings. He enters without announcement. The hall is broader than its outer shape suggested, with roof timbers disappearing into shadow above. A central hearth burns low and clear. Smoke finds an opening high overhead, leaving the lower air clean. Along the walls, woven hangings soften the timber and hold colors of moss, berry, and deep water. The dream's silence has been full of natural voices until now. River, sea, rain, and hoofbeat accompanied the road. Here human activity makes the quiet. A knife moves across ivory. Small pieces touch a polished board. Cloth whispers when someone shifts in a chair. Fire settles inward with a muted sigh. 3 people occupy the bright end of the room, and 2 auburn-haired youths sit nearer the hearth. The young men lean over a gwythbuith board placed between them, their attention balanced between patience and amusement. They move pieces not with the intensity of rivals, but with the ease of brothers who know one another's habits. Farther back, an older man works from an ivory chair ornamented with red gold eagles. Pale shavings have gathered by his foot. His hands are broad, yet the tool between them is narrow enough to shape the ear of a tiny horse. Macsen recognizes the unfinished piece from the silvered ship, even though it still rests somewhere over the dream sea. The third figure sits near a window where tidal light enters under the eaves. Her chair glows red and gold. A matching frontlet lies across her brow, fine enough to catch the light without weighing upon it. Macsen has crossed every landscape for the stillness of this moment, though he does not yet turn fully toward her. First, the hall allows him to arrive. Heat from the hearth reaches the rain-cool cloth of his sleeves. His eyes adjust to beams, silver tables, cups, and the patterned board. Outside, the open gate remains visible through the door, framing a little patch of wet green courtyard. The root behind him has not vanished. It rests in the mud on the boots, the salt smell in his cloak, the mountain chill lingering at his collar. Yet the way ahead no longer asks for travel. It asks only that he notice who is waiting among ivory shavings and red gold light. Scene 9. Golden Hall and Gwyth Buith. The Gwyth Buith board stands on a low silver table between the two young men. Dark squares have been inlaid with bog oak, pale ones with some wood nearly the color of cream. Around its edges runs a border of interlaced lines, each returning into itself. The pieces are small riders, hounds, towers, and seated figures whose smooth heads shine from use. One brother has auburn hair bound loosely at the nape, the other's falls over one shoulder whenever he bends to study the board. Their faces resemble each other without being identical. One carries quick brightness around the eyes, the other has the still gaze of a person who considers several roads before choosing one. They are Cynan and Adion, though Macsen receives their names only later. For now they belong to the arrangement of the hall as naturally as the hearth and silver tables. Their game is a model of movement held within boundaries. A piece leaves the shelter of one corner, another waits near the center. An open line appears where a careless glance would see only occupied squares. The young men do not look up at once. Macsen is unaccustomed to entering a room without altering every face, yet their concentration gives him relief. He can watch unnoticed. The small contest has no urgency beyond the next thoughtful choice, and even that may be delayed while a log gives way in the hearth. Cynan turns a pale hound between finger and thumb. Its body is no longer than the top joint of his finger, but someone has given it lifted ears and a tiny collar. He places it near a carved rider. Adion responds by moving a dark tower along the board's edge, then leans back to see what pattern has changed. Idav pauses in his carving and glances toward his sons. He seems to know the balance of their match from the sound of each piece. A slight smile enters one corner of his mouth when Adion reaches too eagerly for the center, then withdraws his hand and chooses a quieter move. No advice is spoken. Macsen begins to understand the household through these silences. Authority here does not require constant display. Idav can shape ivory while his sons decide their own contest. The gate can remain open because welcome and vigilance have found some old agreement. Gold covers the roof, but worn boots wait beside the door. One of the youths finally raises his eyes. The gaze rests on Macsen without alarm, and recognition seems to precede introduction. Adion touches his brother's wrist. Cynan looks up as well. The game stops in the middle of a possibility, several pale pieces gathered near the board's western edge. Neither brother reaches for a weapon. Cynan inclines his head toward an empty place near the fire, the gesture offered to a traveler rather than an emperor. Macsen accepts by stepping closer. The warmth deepens, carrying the dry scent of the ivory curls at Idav's feet. The board remains between them, a small country of choices. In waking years still to come, Cynan and Adion will cross seas with Macsen and stand beside him when Rome closes its gates. For this first meeting they offer only untroubled attention, two brothers with auburn hair and a game left unfinished. From the window side of the hall comes a movement of red fabric. Every gold plate on the roof seems to send its stored light inward. Macsen turns at last toward Hélène, while Cynan's pale hound keeps its place upon the board. Scene 10. Idav's ivory chair. Idav sits in a chair made from ivory panels, joined over a dark wooden frame. Red gold eagles curve along its arms, their wings folded, their heads inclined rather than raised. Age has warmed the ivory from white to the color of cream. Fine lines follow its surface, recording years too gently to be called cracks. The ruler of this Western household wears a plain wool tunic under a heavier mantle. A narrow gold band fastens the cloth at one shoulder. Nothing about him competes with the chair or hall. His dignity rests in the steadiness of his hands as he turns a small block and removes another pale shaving. Macsen approaches. Idav sets down the knife with its edge facing away from his guest, a courtesy made almost invisible by practice. He lifts the unfinished figure toward the fire. It is a rider this time, cloak indicated by 3 shallow lines, one hand resting on a rounded shield. The resemblance to Macsen is not exact. The face has barely been begun. Still, the emperor sees his road reduced to an object that can be held between 2 fingers. A shield, a traveler, an onward-facing head. These are enough. Idav places the figure among several completed pieces on the silver table. Idav's gaze carries the calm assessment of someone who knows that dreams sometimes arrive at the door wearing the clothes of strangers. He does not ask Macsen to prove the long route. Perhaps the salt dried on the cloak is evidence. Perhaps the hall's own bright silence has already told him why the Roman ruler stands there. A servant brings a shallow basin and folded cloth. The water is warm, scented with rosemary. Macsen washes the dust of several impossible countries from his hands. Grey from the mountain, salt from the landing, and a faint dark trace of the gate's wet oak cloud the basin before the water clears. Bread, cheese, and sliced apples are placed upon another silver table. Idav breaks the loaf rather than calling for ceremony. Its crust yields with a soft tear, releasing steam and the smell of grain. He offers the first portion to Macsen, who receives it with both hands. Hospitality settles where titles might otherwise make the room formal. Macsen eats. Kanan and Adion resume their game, though now they speak quietly over it. Hélène remains near the window, her profile held against the pale square of the straight. The hall continues its life around the visitor without forcing him to become its center. Idav lifts one of the game pieces and examines its base. He rubs a rough place against a small square of hide dusted with fine grit. The motion produces a dry, soothing sound. When the base is smooth, he sets the piece upright. It no longer rocks. There is wisdom in this minute adjustment. Empires seek broad foundations, draw boundaries, and name provinces. A household also depends upon balance, but its corrections may be no larger than smoothing ivory until a carved rider stands evenly. Idav appears content with work that fits in his palm. Macsen senses that the older man is Hélène's father before any relationship is spoken. The same copper warmth touches their hair, though Idav's has faded toward grey. The quiet strength in her posture has its source here, among the open gate, the useful courtyard, and the man who sets his carving tool down politely. Firelight reaches the red-gold eagles. One wing flashes, then darkens. Idav turns his eyes toward his daughter, giving no command, only making space for whatever she chooses. Macsen follows that gaze and finds the final figure of his dream no longer distant. Scene 11. Hélène in the chair of red gold. Hélène's chair stands where the last daylight and the hearth's glow meet. Its frame is red gold, deeper than the yellow roof and warmer than the silver tables. Fine bands curve along its back like roads seen from a height. She sits within those lines without seeming enclosed by them. Her frontlet carries small stones the color of honey and garnet. Auburn hair falls beneath it in long, quiet waves. The old description of her beauty belongs not only to color or form, but to the sense that the whole westward journey has found its human meaning. Mountain, ship, gate, and golden hall were leading toward a person capable of answering an emperor for herself. Macsen looks at her and loses for a little while all awareness of rank. Love in a dream can arrive complete, without the gradual knowledge that waking affection usually requires. It does not feel shallow for being sudden. The root has given it depth. Every river crossed and every mist entered seems to have prepared a chamber within him where this recognition may rest. Hélène meets his gaze. She is not startled, though Macsen has come from beyond the known edges of her daily world. Her hands lie easily on the chair arms. A narrow ring glints on one finger. Beside her stands a spindle wound with red thread, paused in its work when the stranger entered. No rushing music fills the hall. Cunan moves a piece on the gwythbuith board. Idav pares a rough corner from ivory. Outside, the tidal stream slides over stones below the settlement. Hélène and Macsen see one another within these homely sounds, and their meeting becomes quieter because the world continues. He tries to speak. The words that command guards and settle disputes seem too large for this place. Before he can choose a gentler sentence, Hélène's expression softens with the faint possibility of welcome. That small change is more eloquent than any formal speech. Macsen notices the window behind her. Through it, Anglesey lies beyond the Menai water under a clearing strip of sky. A boat no larger than a dark mark moves between island and shore. The view joins Hélène to passage and connection. She belongs to a land crossed by water, yet linked through knowledge of tides, paths, and seasons. Her voice, when it comes, is low enough that the dream does not preserve the words. Its cadence remains. Macsen hears intelligence, reserve, and curiosity balanced together. He steps one pace nearer, careful not to pass the invisible boundary that her stillness maintains. Gold can signify sovereignty in a dream, but Hélène's chair does more than decorate her. It declares that she possesses a seat from which to speak. The emperor has found her. Finding does not equal taking. A road may bring a traveler to a threshold, while consent determines whether the next door opens. Their families watch without intrusion. Adion studies the board but has stopped moving. Cunan's hand rests beside the pale hound. Idav lays his carving across his knees. The household's silence is not empty. It protects Hélène's answer before anyone has asked for it. Macsen feels joy beginning where exhaustion should have been. He would cross the mountain and see again. He would exchange Rome's largest chamber for this window, this spindle, this line of red gold under firelight. Yet the dream is already thinning at the edges. Roof beams blur into darkness. The silver tables reflect a light that no longer has a visible flame. He reaches neither for Hélène nor for the chair. His final sight is the frontlet along her brow, red and gold held in exact balance. Then a hunting horn sounds from impossibly far away, entering the hall like a breeze from the eastern world. Hélène remains seated as the golden roof fades. Her gaze follows Macsen through the closing dream, and the emperor wakes beneath his shield with love already present as memory. Scene 12, waking with the hunt around him. The horn sounds again beside the Roman river. Macsen opens his eyes to the underside of the gold-enameled shield, where the sun has shifted toward the rim. For one confused breath, the circle above him resembles the roof at Caia Saint. Then leaves resolve, water speaks below the bank, and a horse shakes its harness nearby. The shield-bearer notices that he is awake and lifts the shade. Daylight enters sharply enough to make Macsen close his eyes once more. He expects the golden hall to return behind them. Instead, there is only the ordinary red warmth left by sun upon the lids. The hunting company is gathering. Hounds have been found. Men tighten bags and brush grass from their cloaks. An attendant offers Macsen the bronze cup, but he looks first toward the west, where the valley narrows between low hills. No mountain higher than clouds stands there. No mast rises above a river mouth. He sits very still. The body has rested, yet his heart carries the weariness of distance traveled. Salt seems to remain on his lips. One palm remembers the smoothness of whale bone, the other the warm bowl scented with rosemary. When he turns his hand upward, it holds only a faint imprint from the folded mantle. Dreams usually break apart under waking attention. A face loses its exact features, rooms change size, journeys collapse into 2 or 3 improbable fragments. This dream resists that dissolution. Macsen recalls the angle of snow done under cloud, the wet gatepost, the ivory rider in Idav's fingers, and each red stone of Ellen's frontlet. The details do not reassure him. Their clarity makes absence more difficult. The woman in the western hall feels not invented but left behind. Somewhere, perhaps beyond known roads, she continues to sit near the window while tide passes between Arvon and Anglesey. Macsen has awakened on the wrong side of a real distance. An officer asks whether the emperor wishes to resume the hunt. Macsen hears the respectful tone but not the words at first. He glances at the hounds, eager again among fern, and finds their purpose incomprehensible. Whatever creature they followed has become unimportant beside a road no waking map records. He orders the return to Rome. His voice is controlled, though those closest notice a new inwardness. Riders form around him. The shield is strapped behind its bearer's saddle, gold face covered with cloth. Macsen looks at that bundle repeatedly as if it might open again into the dream's first gate. The route home follows the river east. Afternoon reverses the sights of morning, the broad meadow, the mint patch, the alder leaning over water. Everything remains precise and familiar. Because nothing has changed, Macsen's change becomes more visible to himself. Rome gathers at the horizon near dusk. Roof tiles catch low light. Smoke hangs over workshops and the outer roads carry carts returning before dark. The city possesses 1,000 sounds, but Macsen listens for ivory touching wood. He enters under an arch where guards lift their hands, bringing the silence of the Welsh hall into imperial streets. Supper waits in a chamber bright with lamps. Dishes are set out in careful order, fish with herbs, white bread, olives, wine diluted in a silver bowl. Macsen tastes almost nothing. The bread reminds him of Idav breaking a warm loaf. Red wine catches lamplight with the color of Ellen's chair. When attendants withdraw, he asks for darkness. Lamps are extinguished one after another. The room becomes a series of quiet corners, then a single shadowed space. Macsen lies down early, hoping sleep will take him along the river, over the mountain and west to the open gate. Outside, Rome continues beyond the walls. Cart wheels pass. A watch call travels from one post to another. Under the folded cloth at the foot of his bed, the gold-enameled shield holds the last warmth of day, and the emperor waits for the dream to find him again. Scene 13. The week of returning dreams. For 7 nights, Macsen seeks the western hall, and each night's sleep brings only darkness, scattered sounds, or the brief confusion of ordinary dreams. A corridor becomes a garden and is gone. A voice speaks without a face. Dawn enters before any mountain rises. The road he remembers remains closed. During the days, imperial business gathers around him. Messengers bring sealed tablets. Petitioners wait under painted ceilings. Officers trace borders with their fingers on maps stretched over tables. Macsen attends, answers and dismisses, but part of his mind listens beyond every room for the seance moving toward the tide. His household observes the change with care. Food returns untouched. Music that once pleased him seems too ornate. He walks to western windows at hours when the light leaves them empty. No fever warms his skin, and no physician can name an illness whose chief sign is remembrance. On the second night, a wash of gold appears in sleep. Macsen reaches toward it and wakes to lamplight from the adjoining chamber. On the third, he hears 2 pieces meet upon a board, then a door closes somewhere in Rome. The fragments are almost cruel in their nearness, but morning softens even disappointment. He begins recounting the route to himself before sleep. River valley, highest mountain, fleet where fresh water enters the sea, silver fittings, whalebone bridge, rugged island, snow dun, Angull sea, open gate, golden hall. The list is not a spell. It is a chain laid carefully across darkness so memory cannot drift away. Each repetition adds small particulars. The standing stone had white quartz at its base. Idav placed his knife with the edge turned aside. Ellen's spindle was wound with red thread. Such details persuade Macsen that men could find the place if they traveled patiently enough. A dream has given him landmarks rather than mist alone. By the fourth day, counselors exchange worried looks. An emperor's attention is part of the machinery that holds distant provinces together. When it falters, small delays multiply. Yet Macsen's lovesickness is not wild. He grows quieter, more deliberate, as if saving strength for a decision not yet spoken. He orders maps of the western lands brought from the archives. They show coastlines in uncertain shapes, rivers drawn from rumor, and islands placed according to sailors' accounts. Britain appears large and green in the imagination of the mapmaker. Wales is not marked as a separate country, and no tiny hall shines near its northwestern water. A scribe unrolls a second map made for roads. Red lines travel through Gaul toward ports on the northern sea. From those ports, dotted marks cross to Britain and resume as routes between old forts. Macsen lays one finger on the island's western side. The parchment offers no name matching Kaya Saint, but absence from a Roman map no longer means impossibility. The sixth evening, he summons wise men familiar with dreams. Some speak of omens, others of lands the soul may visit while the body sleeps. Macsen listens without surrendering the memory to their systems. The experience feels less like prediction than introduction. He has met people who do not yet know him awake. One advisor suggests sending envoys. The simple proposal settles the room. What sleep began, waking feet might continue. Roads can be tested. Rivers can be followed. A golden roof and an open gate can be sought among actual hills. Macsen dismisses the assembly and spends the seventh night without forcing sleep. He sits beside the covered shield until the lamp burns low. The dream does not return, but at dawn he understands that he no longer needs it to repeat. Its first telling was complete enough. Light enters the chamber and finds him calm for the first time in a week. He will send messengers through the known world, each carrying the authority to ask about the mountain, island, and hall. Somewhere west, Ellen's red thread remains wound on its spindle, while a waking road waits to be recognized beneath the dream. Scene 14. Messengers sent through the world. The messengers assemble in a paved court, while dawn lies pale upon Rome. Their traveling cloaks are brown, blue, and weathered green, chosen for long roads rather than ceremony. At each shoulder is fastened an imperial badge, small enough to fit beneath a hand, bright enough to gain entry when words are doubted. Macsen stands before them without a map. He describes the journey exactly as it came: the river valley, the incomparable mountain, the fleet, the bone bridge, the rough coast, the higher western peaks, and the hall roofed with gold. He gives special care to what happened inside. 2 auburn youths played gwyth. An older man carved game pieces from an ivory chair ornamented with eagles. Ellen sat nearby in red gold. Some listeners lower their eyes to hide uncertainty. They have been ordered to locate cities, armies, missing officials, and rare materials. A place seen only in sleep does not fit ordinary instruction. Yet Macsen's details are too concrete to dismiss. He describes the wet groove in the gatepost and the pale hound on the board as if he had handled both yesterday. Groups depart in different directions. One follows the northern roads, another the southern sea, others the great routes west. They are to search for a year if needed, asking at ports, river crossings, hill settlements, and royal houses. Nobody is told to return quickly. Accuracy matters more than speed. The first months produce messages but no haul. Travelers describe mountains in many provinces, ships with gilded rails, women wearing red ornaments, and game boards on silver tables. Each resemblance proves incomplete. Macsen reads the accounts without anger. The world contains many pieces of his dream, their true arrangement is rarer. Some envoys return exhausted, others continue from coast to coast. At inns, the imperial badge rests near cups while local guides compare routes. Sailors draw islands with spilled drops of wine. Shepherds name peaks their grandparents named before them. Every answer creates another path, and most paths curve away from the remembered sequence. A year passes under this quiet search. Seasons change around Rome. Dust gathers on the shield until Macsen orders it cleaned, revealing the gold circle as bright as the afternoon beside the river. He keeps the object near not as magic, but as the last waking witness to the sleep beneath it. On a rain-washed morning, one band of messengers returns with salt stiffening the hems of their cloaks. They have crossed into Britain. Their account includes rugged coasts and mountains, but they entered by the wrong shore and found no western hall. Macsen asks what the island smelled like after rain. When one mentions fern, peat, and wool smoke, hope rises quietly. These envoys are rested, supplied again, and sent back with a different task. They must stop treating each landmark as a separate object. The dream is a route, its order is the evidence. Mountain must lead to river mouth to fleet, fleet to Britain, and Snowdon to Arvon. The idea changes their search. Rather than scattering, the strongest group begins at the Roman river where Macsen slept. They listen to his description there, standing under the same tree. The valley becomes a first measured point. West lies upstream and overland toward the high country. Macsen gives their leader the badge from his own cloak, a disc edged with red enamel. LN may receive it if the hall is found. No written command can explain what must follow. The badge will say that the dreamer exists and that his messengers have come with permission to speak in his name. When they ride away, the emperor does not watch from a throne. He stands beside the river, where mint rises under their horses and the willow roots still shape a resting place in the grass. The gold shield is held above neither sleep nor shade. Morning light lies openly over its face. The company follows the first bend until trees conceal them. Ahead are all the uncertain miles of waking geography. This time the road will have mud, tolls, wrong turns, weather, and questions. It will also leave tracks, and tracks can reach an open Welsh gate. Scene 15. Retracing the Dream Road. Waking travel begins with ledgers. The messengers count horses, measure grain, inspect straps, and mark the names of river stations. Macsen's dream needed no provisions, but men crossing the world must know where bread can be bought and which ferry still runs after autumn rain. The difference does not make the route less wondrous, it gives the wonder weight. They move west from Rome in a narrow line. Morning frost whitens the grass beside the road, then melts under hoofprints. Vineyards lie quiet after harvest. Stone bridges carry them over rivers whose names are entered on wax tablets and crossed from a list when they fail to resemble Macsen's remembered water. The first great mountain range tempts them into certainty. Summits rise brilliant under snow, higher than anything visible near Rome. Yet the river below reaches no fleet in the required way, and the western descent does not produce the expected coast. The leader turns the company onward. A landmark must belong to the whole chain, not merely satisfy one description. They travel through Gaul, while weather changes from cold rain to clear blue intervals. At roadside houses, they dry cloaks near ovens and ask merchants about ports farther west. The imperial badge opens storerooms, stables, and official quarters, but the most useful answers often come from carters who know where a road continues after its paving disappears. At the coast, masts gather over a tidal river. For a breath, the company believes it has reached the exact harbour. Gilding shines on one rail, gulls turn above sand. Then they notice that the inland mountain is too low and the fleet's route bends south. The place is near in character but wrong in order. They board a broad merchant vessel carrying wool cloth, pottery, wine, and sacks of salt. No bridge of bone joins its deck to another ship. A gangplank scarred by iron nails serves perfectly. The messengers smile at the ordinary timber. The dream may have given Macsen whalebone because distance needed a pale, memorable shape. The crossing to Britain is colder than sleep foretold. Spray enters beneath collars. Sailors reef canvas during a sudden squall, working with calm attention while the passengers sit near cargo lashed under hides. By evening the wind softens and a rugged coast appears in several dark layers through rain. Fern, peat, wet wool, and distant smoke meet them at the landing. Those who came before recognize the scent. They have entered the right island, though not yet the correct line through it. Local roads lead inland between hedges shining with water. Roman paving appears in broken stretches, grass growing through the joints. At each settlement, the company asks about the highest mountain toward the west. Answers carry different names and gestures. One guide knows a great summit near the sea, with a land called Avon below and an island lying beyond narrow water. The messengers exchange no celebration. They have learned to protect hope until several signs agree. Their route turns toward Wales. Hills become more intimate, divided by streams and wooded folds. Language changes around them, music entering names they struggle to repeat. Hospitality remains legible. A bench near a fire, a bowl set down, wet cloaks hung where smoke can reach them. Then Snowdon rises beneath a clearing sky. Its shoulders, waterfalls, and cloud-held crown match the emperor's description with a precision that stills the riders. White quartz gleams at the foot of a lichen-covered standing stone. The road divides three ways exactly as Macsen remembered. They choose the northwest path. At the ridge, the Menai water opens below, and Anglesey rests beyond it under a green veil. Near the mouth of the Sayont, roofs gather around a settlement. One roof receives the afternoon and burns softly gold. The messengers descend with salt wind against their faces. The route has become too faithful for doubt. A gate stands open ahead, rain darkening its oak posts, while from somewhere inside comes the delicate sound of ivory meeting a polished board. Scene 16, the hall found waking. The courtyard is smaller in waking light than it was in Macsen's dream, and more beautiful for being measurable. Chickens scratch beside the woodpile. A cart waits with one wheel removed for repair. Water in the stone channel carries a curled brown leaf around the wooden dipper. The messengers dismount beneath the eave. Mud covers their boots from weeks of roads. One touches the grooved gatepost and finds the timber solid under his hand. Nothing fades. Their horses breathe steam into the cool afternoon, and harness buckles continue to make ordinary sounds. Through the door they see a silver table with a gwyth-buith board. Two auburn-haired youths sit on either side. Pale and dark pieces occupy the squares in an arrangement unlike the one Macsen saw, for many games have passed since his sleep. The brothers look up together when strangers enter. Idav is seated in the ivory chair with red gold eagles. He is repairing a game piece whose tiny shield has broken from its arm. The fragment rests in a wooden dish beside glue warmed over a lamp. When the messengers see chair, carving, and eagle ornament joined in one man, the long search ends without any need for proclamation. Hélène sits near the window. The red gold chair and frontlet are present, but she also has a folded length of wool across her knees and a tablet at her side. Waking life surrounds the remembered image with further truths. She manages household matters, listens to reports, and knows the tide tables used by boats crossing toward Angul Sea. The envoy leader removes Macsen's badge. Red enamel circles its edge, still bright after rain, salt, and the rubbing of a leather pouch. He lays it on the silver table rather than placing it directly in Hélène's hand. The small disc catches firelight beside the unfinished game. He tells them about the emperor's sleep under the shield. His account follows the route in patient order, and every detail changes the faces around him. Cunan glances toward the pale hound on the board. Adion looks at his father's ivory chair. Idav's fingers become still above the repaired rider. Hélène listens without interruption. When the messenger describes her red thread, she looks toward the spindle resting beside her chair. No traveler from Rome could have learned that private detail by rumor. The dream has crossed into the room before the men themselves arrived. The envoys do not pretend that vision grants a claim. They say Macsen has lived in longing since he woke. He has sent them not to carry Hélène away, but to learn whether the place and people exist. The difference matters. It leaves her seated where she is, with family, home, and judgment intact. Idav asks about the roads. How long did the crossing require? Which passes held snow? Where did the company find shelter? His questions test the practical shape of any future bond. Love from afar will still need ships, supplies, and travelers capable of returning safely. Adion offers the messengers food. Warm broth arrives with lakes, barley, and herbs. The travelers eat at a side table while the household speaks quietly in Welsh. They cannot follow every word, but tone carries consideration rather than fear. Outside, their horses settle into the stable, stamping softly on clean straw. After sunset, lamps are lit along the hall. Gold above the rafters is no longer the broad light of dream, only warm reflections from small flames. Hélène lifts the badge at last. Its weight surprises her. Perhaps dreams should not have weight, yet this one has crossed a continent in her palm. She asks the leader to carry an answer to Rome. Her voice is composed, and everyone near the Gwyth board listens. If Macsen truly loves the woman he saw, he must come to Britain himself. She will not travel first to satisfy an emperor's vision. The message is neither refusal nor surrender. It is a road laid back toward its maker. The envoys sleep that night under Idav's roof, while Macsen's badge rests near Hélène's red spindle and tide turns quietly below Kaya Saint. Scene 17. Hélène's answer to Rome. The return journey feels shorter because uncertainty no longer branches at every crossing. The messengers know which ridge leads east, which British port has reliable ships, and where a ferryman keeps a lantern after dusk. They carry no treasure from the hall. Hélène's sentence is enough. Winter follows them through portions of Gaul. Bare vines stripe the hills. Frost silvering the road remains longest in wagon ruts. At night, the envoy leader repeats Hélène's exact meaning to ensure that courtesy is neither softened nor sharpened by fatigue. Macsen must come if his love is real. Rome receives the company under cold rain. Their cloaks are darker, horses leaner, faces marked by travel. Officials begin asking for reports before they have dismounted, but the leader requests the emperor. He keeps one hand over the empty pouch where Macsen's badge used to rest. Macsen meets them in a smaller council room. A charcoal brazier warms the tiled floor. Maps remain piled on a table, their uncertain western coastlines now almost comic beside what the travelers know. Nobody unrolls them. The envoy speaks first of recognition. Snow dun matched. Anglesey lay across the water. The gate was open. Idav carved ivory between his sons and Ellen's chair shone red gold near the window. Each confirmation eases some long-held tension from Macsen's face, though he does not interrupt. Then comes Ellen's answer. No ornament is added. If he loves her, let him come. The room seems to grow larger around that invitation. Macsen had feared the hall might exist, while Ellen rejected the strange intimacy of being seen in another person's dream. Her condition gives him a waking action worthy of the vision. Preparations begin without fanfare. Ships must be gathered, but not as an invading fleet. Gifts are chosen for Idav's household: fine cloth, metalwork, books, vessels, seed and tools. Macsen includes ivory for the carver, though he wonders whether Idav will find its grain worthy of the chair. The imperial court tries to interpret the journey as policy. Councillors speak of Britain, alliances and Western security. Such consequences are real, yet they do not contain the cause. Macsen is going because Ellen asked him to cross the distance himself. For once, the private reason comes before the public explanation. He returns to the riverbank before departure. The tree has lost most of its leaves. Willow roots show among damp grass, and winter water runs fuller over the half-submerged stone. The shield-bearer accompanies him, carrying the gold-enameled object that began the road. Macsen lies down only long enough to see the familiar angle of shade. He does not sleep. The dream is no longer required to transport him. Horses wait on the road, ships wait at the coast, and men have measured every difficult mile. He studies the shield's inner surface. Scratches, rivets, and leather straps are visible in daylight. Nothing supernatural appears there. Its gift was simply coolness at the proper hour, a circle of rest spacious enough for another country to enter. Before leaving, he fills the bronze cup from the river and drinks. Mint has withered along the bank, but crushed stems still release a faint green scent. The memory of summer joins the chill water. Macsen rises and hands the cup to the bearer. Within days, the Western Road carries the imperial party from Rome. This time attendants, pack animals, guides, and written authorities accompany him. The emperor travels awake toward the woman who refused to become a passenger in his dream. Scene 18. Macsen crosses to Britain. The port receives Macsen under a mild dawn. Ships lie against the tide with sails furled and decks washed clean. Among them is no vessel wholly clad in silver, yet wet fittings shine along the largest hull, and a strip of gilding catches the same honey light that crossed the dream fleet. Macsen boards by a wooden gangway. He runs one hand along its rail, remembering whalebone without disappointment. Waking objects have their own enchantment when they carry a person where he has chosen to go. Tar warms in the first sun. Rope smells of hemp and salt. The fleet departs in order, merchant craft and escorts sharing the open water. Rome diminishes not behind them but within the network of instructions left with trusted officials. Macsen has stepped away from the center of rule, and the empire will continue for a time through habits, seals, and other hands. Sea weather remains gentle. A west wind rounds the sails. Dolphins appear beside one bow, their backs smooth and dark, keeping pace for several breaths before sinking into blue. Sailors work around Macsen without ceremonial stiffness. On a ship, rank cannot alter the need to coil a line properly. Britain rises under mist exactly as promised and differently in every detail. The rocks are darker, the gulls louder, the cove more crowded with fishing craft. A boy on the landing stares at the imperial badges, then becomes absorbed by a crab moving between stones. Great arrivals coexist with small discoveries. Guides lead the party inland. The old roads show stretches of durable paving where grass has not taken them. Elsewhere, local tracks find kinder gradients through the hills. Macsen recognizes no single turn from sleep until they approach Welsh country, but the overall westward pull remains familiar. Snowdon appears on the third clear morning, its summit holding a long cap of cloud. Macsen stops his horse. The company waits while he compares waking mountain to remembered height. It is lower than the peak of dream and more complex, ribbed with gullies and changing light. It is also unquestionably the same threshold. The standing stone bears its lichen. White quartz rests below. Macsen dismounts and adds a small pale piece found beside the path. No formal offering is declared. The gesture acknowledges the place where another traveller's uncertainty ended. At the ridge, Anglesey lies beyond the strait. Tide has withdrawn, revealing sandbanks not visible in the dream. Birds gather in the shallows. Kaya Saint occupies the river mouth below, roofs damp from a passing shower. The golden hall gleams only along one edge, modest beneath the enormous sky. Word travels ahead faster than the riders. People appear near the road, not in fearful crowds, but in family groups curious to see the ruler who dreamed their country from Rome. Children notice the enameled shield. Older faces study Macsen himself, measuring whether the waking man deserves the route he has been given. The gate stands open. Macsen passes under its rain-dark beam for the second time and feels the difference between recognition and return. Chickens move away from the horses. The repaired cart now has both wheels. In the channel, the dipper taps lightly against stone. Idav waits at the hall entrance with Cunan and Adi on. Ellen stands a little behind them, wearing no frontlet, only a blue mantle fastened at the shoulder. Without red gold around her, she is more fully the person Macsen came to meet. Her gaze is steady and not unkind. He dismounts before reaching the steps. No messenger carries his declaration. Macsen walks the final length of pale gravel himself, while the shield that shaded his sleeping face remains strapped to a saddle behind him. Scene 19, the Maiden Fee and Three Forts. Macsen and Ellen speak first in the hall where he dreamed her, but waking conversation takes time. They share meals, walk beside the tidal river, and compare the route as each knew it. He tells her about the mountain that pierced cloud. She tells him how Snowdon looks when winter sun lies only on its northern shoulder. Affection develops inside ordinary days. Ellen sees that Macsen listens when she describes the movement of goods, people and news through Wales. He discovers how closely her knowledge joins household, landscape and rule. She can name the safest crossing to Anglesey at different tides and the inland valleys that remain passable after long rain. Their marriage joins dream recognition to public agreement. Idav's hall is dressed with fresh rushes. Tables hold bread, apples, cheese, honey and warm dishes scented with leeks. The Gwythbuith board is moved aside for cups, though Cunan claims one last victory from Adion before helping clear it. Ellen wears the red gold frontlet. Macsen's enamelled shield hangs on the wall near her chair, not as a weapon but as the round doorway through which he first arrived. Firelight moves between the two metals, warm colors answering one another above the gathered household. After the marriage, Hélène names her maiden fee. She does not ask only for jewels, cloth, or coin. Britain is to be secured for her father, and 3 chief strongholds are to stand where her people can hold authority, one in Arvon, one at Caerleon, and one at Carmarthen. The request turns love toward enduring geography. Macsen agrees. In the dream he came as a man emptied of empire. Awake, he can use imperial resources to honor the country that received him. Builders, surveyors, masons, carpenters, and road crews are summoned. Local knowledge directs them, because stone, rainfall, and river behavior cannot be understood from distant plans. Arvon's fort belongs beneath the mountain, near the water facing Anglesey. Its walls rise from foundations set among gravel and firm ground. Carts bring dressed stone. Mallets sound in measured intervals. Lime is mixed in pits while sea wind dries the outer courses. Caerleon stands farther south where the river Usk curves through a broad valley. Old roots and remembered Roman presence give the place layered authority. Workers repair what can be used, shape new timber, and clear drains choked with leaves. Hélène visits long enough to walk the perimeter and ask where winter water will go. Carmarthen lies toward the west beside the river Towy, another meeting of road and water. Their morning mist can remain after sun reaches the higher fields. A fort placed on firm rising ground watches no theatrical frontier. It holds stores, shelter, administration, and a dependable place from which the surrounding country may be served. The 3 sites create a triangle of movement through Wales. Arvon faces mountain and strait. Caerleon attends the southeastern approaches. Carmarthen rests near western routes and fertile river country. Hélène's fee is therefore a network, not a set of ornaments. Her marriage asks power to become useful on the ground. Britain for Idav carries the spacious language of sovereignty found in myth. The arrangement does not need to match the careful boundaries of later administration. It expresses a political wish that Hélène's family and land receive standing equal to the emperor who came from afar. Macsen learns that a gift can also anchor the giver. Each fort binds his story more closely to Welsh rivers and roads. He dreamed of one hall. Hélène has shown him a country of connected places. Their marriage extends beyond the chair where he first saw her without erasing the authority she held there. When the first gate at Arvon hangs true on its hinges, Hélène presses her palm to the oak. Rain darkens the outer grain. The road passes through towards Snowdon, and Macsen understands that the open gate of his dream has multiplied. Scene 20. Sarn Hélène and the roads across Wales. The road later associated with Hélène does not exist as one bright ribbon laid down in a single season. It is a family of routes, old tracks strengthened, Roman ways remembered, upland passages linked to forts and settlements. People will call parts of it Sarn Hélène, carrying her name over stone and through rain. In northern Wales, crews choose firm ground along valleys before climbing toward the high country. They clear brush from earlier embankments, reset stones shifted by frost, and shape drainage channels beside the traveled surface. The work is patient because water decides whether a road survives. Hélène rides with surveyors beneath Snowdon. She asks shepherds where streams rise suddenly after storms and which slopes hold snow longest. Their answers alter lines first drawn on tablets. A route that looks direct from a hall may be foolish upon a wet hillside. Local memory bends imperial intention into durable form. Stone is gathered from nearby, not carried needlessly over mountains. Larger pieces settle at the base, smaller gravel above. In boggier places, brushwood and timber provide a foundation. Culverts allow little streams to pass beneath rather than tear through during winter rain. Macsen watches a road crew near Arvon. Men use wooden levels, cords, baskets, picks, and broad shovels. No object is grand. Together they create a surface where hoof, foot, and wheel can move with less uncertainty. A girl brings water from a spring in a clay jug and leaves it under a cloth to keep cool. San Helen becomes a dream road made practical. Its wonder lies not in whale bone or silvered ships, but in repeated small judgments. Where to place a stepping stone, how deep to cut a side ditch, which pass should receive a shelter, and where a marker remains visible in fog. Travel changes gently around it. A messenger reaches a fort before the lamp is spent. Wool moves toward a market without soaking in marshy ground. Families visit kin beyond a ridge more easily. Soldiers may also use such roads because power travels wherever surfaces permit, but the same stones carry bread, news, cattle, tools, and songs. At one high section, cloud lowers until workers can see only a few paces. They stop laying stone and listen for bells from pack ponies already on the route. Sound arrives through the white air, slow and reassuring. When the cloud lifts, the finished way stretches behind them like a grey seam sewn into green cloth. Helen's name attaches itself to roads because roads suit her role in the story. She is found through a route, asks Macsen to travel it himself, then uses their union to secure connections within her country. The maiden in a golden chair becomes the keeper of distances made passable. Near Carmarthen, the road approaches fields beside the Toey. Carts leave shallow lines after rain. Farther east, a branch tends toward Caerleon and the Usk. Northward routes return through mountain valleys toward Arvon. The three forts breathe through these connections, receiving and sending people like steady hearths along a darkened house. Years will blur construction dates, alter names, and weave legend through the surviving stones. That does not weaken the association. Myth often preserves what a culture wishes a landscape to remember. Here the memory is of Helen joining sovereignty to passage, and of paths carrying her presence long after footsteps fade. At dusk, one new road section reaches a ridge above the Menai water. Anglesey lies beyond, green under a silver sky. Workers set down their tools. In the quiet after the last mallet stroke, a distant game piece seems almost to touch a board in the hall below. Scene 21, Rome remembered softly. Years pass in Britain, while roads lengthen and the forts take their settled shapes. Macsen grows accustomed to rain moving over snow dun, to tidal calendars, and to evenings when Idav's hall smells of apple wood. Rome remains his, yet distance slowly changes possession into memory. At first, reports arrive regularly. Couriers cross the sea with sealed packets, accounts, and requests. Macsen reads them beside Helen's window. He sends decisions east, each one taking weeks to return as action. Government stretches over the same roads that once carried love westward. Then messages become uneasy. Powerful men in Rome have begun treating the absent emperor as a former ruler. New loyalties gather in council rooms. Gates that would once have opened at the sight of his badge may no longer do so. The empire has continued through other hands and learned to call that continuation legitimate. Macsen receives the news without sudden rage. He knew absence had a cost, even if affection made the years feel brief. At supper he places the latest tablet beside his cup. Rain brushes the roof. Canaan and Adion wait for him to speak. Helen understands the matter as both wife and political partner. Britain has gained roads and strongholds, her family has gained standing. Rome, however, is part of the identity that crossed the riverbank dream. If Macsen allows it to vanish without answer, the Western settlement will rest upon an unfinished foundation. They discuss return by firelight. No one describes glory. The questions are provisions, ships, alliances, and the uncertainty of a city that has closed itself. Canaan knows how to read a board for open lines. Adion knows when patience has ceased to improve a position. The brothers offer to accompany Macsen. Their choice grows from kinship formed over shared years, not a sudden thirst for conquest. They have walked the Welsh roads, inspected gates, and eaten at the emperor's table. Rome is distant, but its refusal now touches their sister's household. Preparations remain subdued. Soft banners are folded into chests. Armor is inspected away from the main hall, its metal wrapped so clatter does not fill the rooms. Grain, dried apples, cloth, lamp oil, and medicine occupy more lists than weapons. A long return depends chiefly upon keeping people fed, shod, and sheltered. At Kaya Saint, Idav gives Macsen a newly carved Gwythbuith piece. It is the shield-bearing rider begun in the first dream. The face is still simple, but the cloak and round shield are complete. The figure stands evenly on a base polished smooth. Macsen wraps it in wool and places it beside the imperial badge Ellen once kept. The two small objects carry different authorities. Enamel speaks of Rome, ivory speaks of the open hall. Together they fit within one hand. Ellen will travel part of the way, depending on how the roads and weather allow, but the movement toward Rome belongs especially to Macsen and her brothers. She does not disappear from the final act. Her counsel shapes the route, her country supplies support, and her presence remains in the alliance Canaan and Adion embody. Ships gather again at the coast. Their sails are practical brown and cream. No gilded fleet is needed now. On the last evening, the family shares bread at the silver tables, while the Gwythbuith board stays closed in its wooden case. The sea can be heard faintly beyond the gate. Macsen looks toward the east rather than west for the first time in many years. Rome is remembered without longing's fever, as a duty waiting behind distance. At dawn, soft banners will lift outside the hall and follow the road Ellen helped make possible. Scene 22, Return, Settlement, and the Dream Left Glowing. The journey back to Rome reverses the old dream road without undoing it. Snowdon falls behind. Britain becomes a rugged line under cloud. Ships carry Macsen, Canaan, Adion, and their companions toward the continent, while Ellen's roads remain laid among the Welsh valleys. The effort to regain Rome is remembered as resistance, siege, and final entry, but the harshest details can rest beyond tonight's lamplight. It is enough to know that gates stayed closed for a time. Camps settled outside the walls. Banners moved softly in evening wind while messages passed between those within and those who had returned. Canaan and Adion stand beside Macsen through the long uncertainty. The brothers who once leaned over a carved board now read roads, supplies, and loyalties on a larger field. Their value lies as much in patience as courage. They know that an occupied center can sometimes be approached by attending to its overlooked edges. One morning the balance changes. Support inside the city answers the authority waiting beyond it. Rome opens, not in the sudden blaze of spectacle, but gate by gate, street by familiar street. Macsen enters the city he left, carrying an ivory rider wrapped in Welsh wool. People remember him, some bow from habit, some from relief, and others watch carefully until the new settlement becomes clear. Macsen does not return as the same ruler who fell asleep beside a river. He has learned that power may sit in an open timber hall, speak from a red gold chair, and travel over roads shaped by local rain. The restored court receives Canaan and Adion with honor. Silver tables here are larger, columns taller, ceilings more elaborate than Idav's hall. Neither brother is overawed. They have seen their father steady a carved piece by rubbing its base against hide, and they know balance can depend upon work no audience notices. After Rome is secure, choices spread the family story farther west. Tradition carries Canaan and his people toward Th-Ladau, the land later known as Brittany. That distant shore becomes an epilogue of settlement and kinship, another place where Britain and the continent face one another across water. Behind the Welsh name Macsen stands the distant memory of Magnus Maximus, a Roman emperor who crossed into Britain. Centuries softened official chronology while keeping the Western connection. In that remembered country, Rome and Wales meet through courtship, sovereignty, useful roads, and a woman who sets conditions upon an emperor's love. Stone settles beneath the road while grass, rain, footprints, and cherished names gather above it. Together they lead toward the same western hall when the light is low. Perhaps the most enduring object is still the shield. It began as protection in a hunt, became shade for sleep, and then turned into the round gold threshold of an entire route. No oracle raised it. A servant simply held it at the correct angle while his ruler rested. Night settles differently over every part of the story. In Rome, lamps burn along stone corridors. Near Caia Saint, tide moves under darkness between Arvon and Anglesey. On San Elen, rain gathers in shallow hollows beside fitted stones. Somewhere in Th-Ladau, a western window receives the last sea light. Idav's hall grows quiet. The game pieces are returned to their box one by one. Pale hound, dark tower, tiny horse, shield-bearing rider. The ivory chair holds a mild sheen beside the banked hearth. Red thread rests wound upon the spindle near Ellen's chair, ready for another morning. The open gate remains the gentlest mystery. It admitted Macsen first as a dreamer, later as a man willing to cross real weather, and always on terms larger than his desire alone. Rain follows the old groove down one oak post. The wooden dipper taps once in the stream and then floats still. If sleep has arrived somewhere along the road, the story can continue without requiring you to follow. The silvered ship knows the western current. Snow dun keeps cloud around its quiet crown. A line of worn stone carries moonlight through the Welsh grass. Long after emperor, messengers, builders and players have rested, the dream road remains faintly visible. It begins under a gold shield beside a Roman river and ends wherever Ellen's name meets the land. Between those places, the golden hall keeps one warm window facing the tide, and its light does not need to go out.